All right, period 9 math class. Welcome. Monday, March 30th. We're going to finish up, pretty much be finishing up the end of the packet. We might do a couple more problems out of it tomorrow. But the plan is Wednesday, we're going to start a new unit. It's going to be a unit we work on together. It's for both 7th grade classes, the last 7th grade topic that we haven't covered yet in honor. So it's geometry, mainly around three-dimensional objects. There's a little bit of two-dimensional geometry first. It's a little background information that we'll need so that we can talk about surface area and volume of three-dimensional shapes. So we'll start that on Wednesday will be the plan. But for right now, entrance task for today, if you go to page 19, there's some blank graphs there. And I'd like you to, for number 1, graph the inequality y is less than 3/2 x minus 3 on that coordinate plane. And then copy down this graph here. Pay no attention to that little mess up I have scribbled right there. Maybe I can zoom in just a little bit for you guys here so you can see it a little better. Zoom. Might be a little bit better for you. But yeah, tell me, I would say find the equation, but it's not an equation, it's an inequality. So find the inequality that's represented by this graph here. So here I'm giving you the inequality and you're going to give me the graph, and I flip it over here where I give you the graph and you're gonna name the inequality, and the y is less than or greater than to mx plus b in that form. Okay, so pause it and try those two. Okay, now that you've tried them, I'm going to go over the answers. I'll put the answers in a different color here. So for the graph here of number 1, I have an m of 3/2 and a b of -3. So I'm going to begin at -3 on the y-axis, make my first point, and from there I'm going to move up 3 to the right 2. So up 3 to the right 2. Up 3 to the right 2, up 3 to the right 2, can backtrack down 3 and to the left 2. And this is a less than sign, not a less than or equal to, so it's less chalk here. So when I make my line, it's going to be a dotted line. There's my dotted line. Put my arrows on. And since it's less than, I will shade below it. So not anything on the line because it's a dotted line, but any coordinate in the shaded region below the line. If you took like a point, like let's say this one, 5, -1. I plugged in x for 5. And -1 for y, that's in my solution set. That point would give me a true statement, or any other of these points in the shaded region. If you plugged in that coordinate, x and the y of it, it would give me a true statement. If I plugged in anything on the line or above, any coordinate on the line or above, that would be a solution that would make this false, not true. All right, over here for the second one, again, it really boils down to if I can determine what m and b are. Well, b is at 2 on the y-axis, so my b is at +2. And my m is going to be, I'm going down 1 and to the right 3. So down 1, change of y, to the right 3. 3 is my change of x. So I get b and m right there. It's a solid line shaded above. So my inequality would be y is greater than, because it's above, greater than or equal to, because it's a solid line. So y is greater than or equal to m (1/3 x) plus b, which is 2. So the inequality is represented by that graph above would be y is greater than or equal to (1/3 x) plus 2. Okay? So hopefully that went all right. We are going to finish up by doing some notes on page 15 today, and then we will let you try the problems on page 16 after the lesson is over. So let's take a look at page 15. So it says graphing when it isn't in y equals mx plus b form. Okay, well, there's options. You could use tables and stuff, but it's much easier most of the time if we just use algebra to take the equation that's not in y equals mx plus b form and just go ahead and put it into y equals mx plus b form. All right, so how we typically do that, the main idea is we use algebra to solve for y instead of x. We want to get y alone, we want y equals mx plus b form. So if y is not alone, we're going to make it be alone. And then on the other side, if there's an x term and a constant term, we're always going to put the x term first, so it's an mx plus b form and not b plus mx form. But that's pretty easy. It's pretty easy at the end. So let's go ahead and take a look here at our first example. This is a pretty straightforward one here. So if the original equation is written in R, I gave you that, or written in red right there. So if I gave you guys that equation, I said graph that. Probably a couple of you would throw up in the corner. That'd be okay. Then after you get yourself gathered and composed, and I say, wait a second, I can just get this into y equals mx plus b form by doing some simple algebra. The only thing that's keeping y from being alone is the 2x, so I can get rid of it by subtracting a 2x from both sides. And you're taking away, if you think of this as the old balance I did in class where I had the red tray and the yellow tray in class, if you take away a 2x from both sides, you're just taking away from both trays. So I take two, if I was using Jolly Ranchers, for example, if this was 2 Jolly Ranchers plus a Starburst equals 5 Jolly Ranchers, I know this is minus, but like plus 4 grams, let's say. All right. If I say, okay, let's take away 2 Jolly Ranchers from both sides, I'm not going to touch my 4 grams. I'm not going to touch my Starburst for right now. I'm just going to go ahead and take away 2 Jolly Ranchers from both sides. And those are the like terms that we combine there. So we just take away 2 x's from the x's over here. We take away 2 x's from the 5 x's over here. And you can see I'm left with a y equals 5x minus 2x is 3x. I just bring down my minus 4, and sure enough, that's in y equals mx plus b form. So I can graph it now knowing that m is 3, or 3 over 1 is a fraction, and b is negative 4. And that allows me to graph my line right there. All right. For the second one here, slightly harder slightly harder equation to deal with. Let me move this up a little bit. If we look at this guy here, all right, you can already see, I know I had it there, and you see it on your paper at home. I'm going to start by getting rid of the x's. So I take away 5 x's both sides. Leaves me with 2y is equal to negative 2x plus 10. And here's where it's a little bit different. It's not combining like terms anymore. This is a times 2. I have double the amount of a, what I say this was a starburst for y. Two starbursts on this side. Well, I don't have any starbursts. I don't have any y terms or any starbursts on this side to take any starbursts away. So instead I have to get creative and say, well, I'm going to cut this weight in the red tray exactly in half. So I'm going to take the weight in this whole yellow tray and cut that in half. So what that means is if I'm cutting everything on this side in half, I'm dividing everything on that side by 2. Well, I got to divide everything on this side by 2 as well. All right, so I divide everything on both sides by 2. I'm left with y on this side. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1, so I get negative 1x, or you could call it negative x, just negative x. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So I'm left with y equals negative 1x plus 5. Again, it would be the same thing if you wrote it like this. That is also the same equation. It's perfectly fine. So when you see that, m would be negative 1 over 1 if you want to write it as a fraction, and b would be 5. So when you go to graph it, it would look like our graph right there. So this is an extra step of just having to use algebra to first get it into your y equals mx plus b form. And it would work the exact same way if you ended up having an inequality instead of an equal sign there. It wouldn't change anything. You just obviously graph it accordingly with dotted lines if necessary and shading above or below. All right, so try the 4 problems on page 16. Hopefully you do pretty well on them. And I'll check in with you guys tomorrow with a little bit more practice. And later in the week, I'll post, maybe Thursday or Friday, we'll try another Google Meet. We did have Livia, Emmett, Emma, and Brianna that were able to check in on Friday. They said that they enjoyed being able to see everyone and talk for a little bit. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that and be able to make that meeting later in the week. So I'll post that information later. All right, you guys have a great Monday, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.